Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Rains. You can call me PJ. Welcome to Environment Sketching for Production. I'm a full-time concept artist in the game industry right now. I've also worked as a visual development artist in the animation industry. I am excited to share my knowledge about being a professional, and hopefully you will all create some great work in this class towards that end, and feel free to ask questions about reaching your personal goals as an artist, whether it's in games or animation or in some other avenue. But a lot of what we're talking about with these environments is just basic storytelling, and I think that could apply to many avenues. We're going to be focusing mostly with these talks and with the content I'm sharing about how it applies to the animation pipeline. But the artistic principles would carry over into other avenues of illustration as well. So I think there'll be something for everybody. Really excited about teaching it. On a high level, I want to share some of the class goals for what this class is going to be all about. We're going to learn to create environment art for a production pipeline. Developing personal processes of thumbnail sketching through final rendering. I have my own processes of creating art using reference that I collect through a thumbnail sketch, rough thumbnail sketching. I'll clean that up and make it like a final layout drawing, and then I'll apply a tonal to that to get the lighting working. That'll be a black and white pass, and then I'll do color on top of that to make it a final rendering. So we're going to explore those different steps through my methods, and I want each of you to think about how it would apply to your process and hopefully incorporate it in your own way that you feel is best. And I think it'll be very helpful for everyone. We're going to develop skills in storytelling mainly. Like I said earlier, it's not just learning the basic tools for what it takes to be a good concept artist and an illustrator, meaning drawing and painting, but also conceptually what you're doing with the art. That's what separates a VisDev artist or a concept artist from just a regular illustrator, because we're not just copying things, we're interpreting something in text, like in a script or some other description, and we're putting that into a medium that's it's going to tell a story, it's going to solve a problem for what the project needs. And then we're going to practice these kind of 3 pillars of design that I like to focus on. Those would be drawing, lighting, like doing a tonal, and mood, which is color. Those are the high-level goals for what I'm going to be teaching in this class. So class assignments, meaning what you'll take away from the class. Upon completing the class, you'll take away the following: collection of environment design photo reference. With each of the assignments, I'll ask you to look around in the web or in a book or something and find a lot of photo reference from things in the real world that you think would apply to your chosen story. And that's going to get your the wheels turning in your mind, thinking about how things what exists, what they look like, how they're built, and so on, and translating that into a stylized medium in your own personal work. But having a collection of photo references is going to build up the visual vocabulary that you're going to need to make things seem believable. We're going to make numerous thumbnail sketches. That's the thumbnail phase of making our images. Beyond that, tonal and color studies of original compositions. And then 3 final pieces are ultimately what comes out of the class. Those are either going to be a tight line drawing and or a tonal painting or a color painting. And the 3 sort of settings that I want to hit on in this class would be architectural setting, something that includes some man-made objects, organic setting, a place from our chosen stories that's purely natural and doesn't necessarily have any man-made stuff in it. It's a different way of looking at things where the architecture is very hard edge and geometry based, and the organic stuff is a little looser and has a lot more curves or features that feel a little bit more stylized. And then the villain setting will be more about the storytelling and problem solving aspect of it. That could be a blend of both architecture and organic, but it's going to have stuff that has to do with, again, problem solving, set dressing, attacking an environment in a way that feels characteristic around somebody in the story. So all the work will be based on a personally chosen fairy tale. I'll describe that a little bit more later. Everyone can have their own stories, or you can do something that I'll choose for my example. Like I'm going to do a demo today based on a fairy tale. It's up to you, but I want it to feel personal and something you'll have fun with ultimately for 8 weeks. So it doesn't have to be something that's already been visualized in a film, like say Cinderella. It could be something that's a little bit lesser known, and it just has to be something where there's a body of text that exists. It takes the thinking out of it. You just choose something that you think you'd be able to put a creative spin on and make an interesting architectural, organic, and villain setting illustration. Those 3 areas would come out of the story you choose. So for this week 1, we are hitting on these big ideas here. And they are what a VisDev artist does and how do they fit into the production pipeline. Secondly, what is the production pipeline? That's kind of an industry term, and it has to do with the way films or games get made. I'm going to describe it a little bit more later. Design versus lighting versus mood, and these are 3 terms I threw out earlier. They have to do with those 3 areas of illustration and what I think makes them up. How I want all of my students to be really solid in each of those areas, in the drawing, in the tonal pass, and in the color pass. With those big tools in your toolbox, you'll be able to make many kinds of images, and I'll show you lots of examples of what those would look like. We're also going to talk about the elements and the principles of design, beyond just design meaning drawing. How the elements and the principles of design, there's kind of some academic terms and things that are very fundamental to making art, how they add up to composition. And before I go too much into the details of what all those are, I would say that's sort of it's an area that's unto itself very critical in any kind of image making, beyond drawing and painting. Whether you're doing 3D or sculpting or photography, any of these sorts of art forms, they're all going to include these elements and principles and composition that would be very strong. And then the demo I'm going to do at the end is going to be where I choose a story. I gather some reference for it. I'll show you my collection. It's a small collection, and talk about how I think about gathering reference and things that are useful to me and how I want to interpret them into a stylized piece. And then I'll actually do a little thumbnail sketch of an environment. Okay, so what does a VisDev artist do, and how do they fit into the production pipeline? I'll show you some examples here of some VisDev work. This is some of my personal work from a film that I worked on. These are Photoshop paintings done for a film called Legends of Oz. And they design and develop the look and feel of feature films. This is what a vis dev artist would do. They design and develop the look and feel of feature films, animations, and other productions. They imagine and propose ideas for what the animated world should look like based on the story, characters, and action. They develop characters, backgrounds, colors, lighting, props, and more of the story. They typically work in 2D using Photoshop, but also use 3D packages. The art and entertainment industry is one of the most competitive industries out there. Most vis dev artists work on a bachelor's degree first in fine art or illustration or animation or a related field. They compete for an internship and supplemental training programs to gain professional, technical, networking, and experience. What is a production pipeline? Alright, let's go into that. I have some slides here, this little diagram I drew up about the hierarchy within the animation industry. This is based on my experience at Disney, how sort of the power structure is on a particular project. It starts up here with this leadership group at the top of the pipe. You have your directors and your producer. The director could be one person, and sometimes they're multiple people. The producer, I would say the director here, they're the creative type, and they are the ones who are driving the creative vision of the project. The producer is more of an administrator, and I think of the producer as being kind of a team builder. So they're a manager, and they're the liaison between the executives and how the project is doing with the directors. The directors only have to worry about the creative part, and the producer has to worry about the brass tacks and the bottom line of how the production is coming along, whether it's on schedule and stuff like that. So these people team up, and either on their own or through the efforts of a writer, they come up with a script, and the script is the driving force for what's going to feed everyone down here, all the artists and the creative types. Everyone's going to reference the script, so they're working off the same body of material to get their work done. And the directors are keeping that all consistent by following the script. The script can be fluid, it can change from day to day, or whatever, but everyone should be made aware of it when those changes happen, so people can get on board, and they do that through a lot of meetings and stuff, blah blah blah. So when the script comes down the pipe, it'll often go to an editor to start to composite images and sound effects and voices and stuff into a story reel, and they work very closely with the director, and that'll be the working file or the work in progress for what that film is. There's an audio department that works very closely with them. The storyboard artists usually get their hands on the script early on because there aren't any visuals yet. They need to block out the scenes for what's going to happen, what each scene, what each visual, like meaning the actions of the characters are from scene to scene. Whether there's a lot of characters, it's an exterior, an interior, what is actually happening in each scene. So before we get down into this nitty-gritty detail down here, I'll just talk about how there's storyboards. It's kind of the character actions, and then the viz dev crew up here does the high-level blue sky art for what's going to be in the film. So there's no look for what the world is yet, let's say, in this project, and the viz dev artists need to design the characters and the world and the props and the colors and the lighting and everything about it. It might be defined in text in the script, or come from an idea from a director or something. They might have very specific ideas on what is happening in a scene. So the VisDev artists just need to put that vision on the page. And that's right in the wheelhouse for what we're doing in this class, by taking a piece of text from a fairy tale and translating that into cool visuals, and mostly environments. We're going to have a little bit of character integration in our scenes, but mostly environments and mostly stylized environments. I'm really excited about that. The AD, the PD, these are the art director and production designer. I noticed that art directors tend to kind of be color specialists, and the production designers tend to be more into design, meaning the prop design, new vehicles, architecture, organic settings. They're more into drawing out the scenes and making big layouts for them. The art director will do more coloring and lighting stuff, color corrections at the end, those kinds of things. There's character designers, individual specialists, and environment artists who would just do the environments of the VisDev department. There's also VisDev artists that are really good who can do all of them. Art direct and production design and character design and environment design. They're just a jack of all trades. So that's everyone's goal, is to have all those tools in their toolbox, so they have options and choices, and they can have a lot of influence on what the picture looks like. Beyond this group up here, this is a kind of a pre-production level of art. And when you're in production and the storyboards are approved and the VisDev paintings are all approved, they would go into production, and this is a longer process where you define and polish what all the details are. So the animations of the still images of what the characters are doing. It takes a long time to flesh all that out. The effects animation, cleanup of both those departments, and then beyond VisDev, you have the layout department to scene by scene draw out all the compositions, and then BG Paint will color them. All that stuff gets composited down into the film. That's a summation of that. Okay, let's talk about design, concept drawing versus lighting, which is value, versus mood, which is color. And I have some slides down here to kind of show that. This would be drawing of, when I say design of VisDev, these are loose sketches of some characters I did for a game, and they're pretty loose, but they're just loose designs. I wouldn't say that they're anything used for a mood, or they have lighting or anything applied to them. This is some more drawing design work for a set piece in a film. This is also from a film. Strictly drawing. This is a cleanup layout drawing. And then we have a rough layout drawing. This comes right before the cleanup. You could just see it's a kind of self-explanatory. This is a rougher version. It's still pretty clear, which I would like to strive for all our work to be clear even in the rough stage, so you can tell the perspective and the gist of what's happening in the scene, not be too rough. This is a cleanup version of that, where you don't have objects drawn through and stuff. This is a cleanup layout of an environment. And this is a rougher drawing. I'd say this is a rough layout. Just a cross-section call-out of an interior to show the design of what an area of a game would look like. So these are all drawings. This is they're all mine, and that's sort of my drawing style. Then we'll go into lighting, which is value painting, black and white painting. So this should look familiar. It's the same layout that I showed earlier, but with some lighting applied to it. And so hopefully the line drawing shows you a clear idea of what would be happening in the scene, It may not have the kind of feel as this, because this is dramatic and contrasty and it has a little bit more emotion to it. We'll get into what lighting and color and mood would do for something and how that is more. It's another layer of storytelling that's very helpful. But when I talk about lighting and value, this is exactly what that is. Another lighting piece. This is for the layout department on Princess and the Frog. And these are little lighting and composition studies where I would do on site, on location somewhere, like in a park or garden or whatever. I'd go and do little sketchbook studies in pencil, and then I'd color them in marker and maybe clean them up in Photoshop at the end. These ones happen to all be in marker, where I do a 3-value study, and I think simplifying the values like that. We'll talk more about the practical steps on doing something like that and how it's helpful to do limited value, and you get really focused focal areas with that method. But in general, as a studying method and just as a way to quickly define lighting in a scene, I think this is a good way to go. And it looks really good in a portfolio. And for this here, this is another more rendered piece. This is a location design I did based on a mission down in San Diego, and then I did a 2-value lighting pass on it, then I did a 3, and then I did a full value lighting to really show a lot of depth in the scene. More lighting, and another tonal for film. Okay. Mood, which is color work, would be like this. So hopefully the values are good enough to where when you add color, it doesn't dramatically change the composition or the focal areas or any of that stuff. It just adds another layer of mood or emotion to the piece. But nothing really structural changes. It's still the same time of day, just adding a little bit of atmosphere, ambiance, and description of what the setting would be. So very mossy, it's not an overcast day, those kinds of things. And these are all in Photoshop. A little bit sketchier piece. This is purely a mood piece. I wouldn't say it's a very strong design for someone to model something in 3D off of. Just gives you the idea of the emotion of a certain scene. Another color piece, some mood pieces, and this is from a color script of a film where I was given black and white 3D geometry to paint over, and they're just flat images, and I go in and create all the layers and stuff, and you can reference a lot of the VizDev to get an idea of what the colors of the backgrounds are and all those little architectural details. But what I would be doing is adding a key lighting effect, what the colors would be, and how that light is affecting the local characters and the environment around them. I had a lot of fun doing those. This is another environment piece that's more of a mood piece. It's a little bit rougher, but I think it's clear enough to show a little section of what a game would look like. It's kind of like Uncharted sort of vibe, the game Uncharted. And I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a demo for another class that I teach. And I'm going to show that an example of some thumbnail drawing. So let's talk about the elements of design and the principles of design and how they make up composition. I have some nifty slides here that I think will spell it out pretty clearly. Okay, so the elements of design, there's a few of them here, and if you look online, elements of design will pop up. It's a common term, and you might have more or less than these. These are the ones that I really key on in my teaching, though. I use them all the time in my work, and they're just the little nuts and bolts of what make up good images. Line, color, texture, shape, form, and value. Pretty straightforward. I think we all know what those are. Everyone knows what line is. You make that kind of mark with a pencil or pen. Color, pretty straightforward. Texture, you get into a little bit more complexity, taking what line and color would be, something fairly flat, and adding some noise on it to give it more form or whatever. Shape and form, the difference between them. Shape is a 2D medium and form is 3D. And then value is how light is applied to things. That's just the light and dark forms of a tone. So you could have light like white and dark black. Those would be values. Or when values apply to color, you could have dark and light versions of different hues. And of course, color is defined by hue, value, and saturation, HSV, on the scale in Photoshop. That's the academic term for it, but we actually use that a lot in the industry. How corrections can be made in an image so often just by changing the hue, value, and saturation of things to make them read as being a more shallow or deep space, or to make them a little bit clearer for the viewer. So these are our elements that we're going to work with mostly. And again, they're all relating to composition. Okay, the principles of design: center of interest, balance, harmony, contrast, directional movement, and rhythm. And the best way to talk about these is just with these visual examples I have here. This is a piece from a game, and I like using it because it's got a lot happening in it, but the thing that makes it work the best and be really a simple read for the viewer is the fact that there's a clear center of interest, and there's use of contrast and color and lighting to show that. It's a relatively dark scene, pretty dim overall, low key I would say, but the bright area in the middle would be the center of interest, and they do that with value. Okay, balance. These are examples of things being balanced and imbalanced, more symmetrical composition. This is a symmetrical piece, but the camera is kind of off-center, so it makes it a little bit more dynamic. And this one is more of like a 2-point perspective drawing, and it makes it even more dynamic. It's not symmetrical. There's differences on either side of the river here, and there's dynamic lighting coming diagonally through the piece. In general, diagonal lines and angles like that give things a little bit more dynamics, and things being perfectly straight up and down or straight across, whether they're parallel or perpendicular, but whatever the case may be, when you have things like that that are, I would say, even a perfect 45-degree angle, those are things that feel more mechanical and measured and stiff. So those can give things balance if that's desired, or you want to make it more dynamic, so you can add a little bit more spontaneous angles. Okay, harmony. This piece is harmonious because of the colors. They're analogous. Analogous means the colors are near each other on the color wheel.